My name's Elizabeth Blake Thomas, and I have been directing for 4 years. But I wasn't always a film director. I was a theatre director for many years in the UK, and that was as far as my entertainment industry knowledge went. And it was my daughter that actually got me into the film industry. She was an actress, and she got this great opportunity to come over to LA to star in a film. So having been on all her sets, and having understood the knowledge that I had from being on several of my theatre productions, I thought maybe I could put those together and create just something for her show reel. We were also attending lots of film festivals at the time, being able to experience all these other people that were in the industry. Once I put this thing together, I realised that I actually really enjoyed it. And I had a friend, a colleague who was a producer-director, who approached me and said that I should be a director. I said, how do I do that? He said, you just say you're a director. So I did. I had absolutely no contacts within the film world. I have never written a proper script before, and yet I went ahead and thought, well, listen, I can make this on 5K, I can make this on 250K, because to me it was about making a film. And even though I didn't have the knowledge of how to do it, it didn't matter. It was about saying, let's just put a camera with a story and some people together and see what we can come up with.
I really feel like connected to you.
Yes, Melissa, that is a very valid point. All of these girls go to this school and they were all taken from this area.
Trust, Pray, Hope was more about making a movie for the first time ever. I didn't know exactly what you should do. So I put people together, I had a story, I had some money, and I made something. And if I hadn't done that, then I wouldn't know what I know now. So you have to just start. I think that's the key. It was fantastic on set because it was great. There was nothing wrong with anything on set, great fun. It was when I went into the editing room. That was the first moment I realised that my 1.5 hour long shot probably wasn't the best idea. But I would understand I need 1 million inserts, I need to break away, I need to have done things in a different way. But that also meant I had to come up with some really cool creative things. So one of the biggest issues with Trust, Pray, Hope was that the producer hadn't fully read the script, which is actually much more common than you'd think. And so you're not always aligned and on the same vision. This actually came as a bit of a shock to me, but it did teach me a valuable lesson, which was to ensure that even before I start shooting, is to sit there with that producer, ensuring that you are both on exactly the same page. Financials are obviously hugely important when you're shooting a movie, and we want to raise as much money as we can. But there does come a fine line between selling your creative soul and tell the story that you want to tell. So if you've got somebody that is saying, I'll give you this amount of money, but I want it done this way, I just have a bit of an extra think and pause to make that decision whether it really is worth it. It's not worth your soul to have somebody come in and not give you that freedom to be able to direct and create something that you think is going to really show your talents and who you are. When we're working on these lower budgets, you put your heart and soul into it and you don't mind the fact that there's going to be a few extra days, maybe weeks, maybe a month afterwards. But the post-work, especially if you're asking everybody to work for maybe free favors, less than normal, always takes longer. And so actually that post time, you need to think about that. And if there is a budget, include that time in what you're going to get paid. The second film, I didn't have any money and I had to go and do this all again. And that was that was interesting.
In the sleepy little seaside town of Hermosa Beach, Southern California, school is out.
What are we gonna do now? Oh, summer stretches before us. We can do anything. Like have the best band ever!
1, 2, 3, 4.
Your father had a heart attack. We gotta fly to London tonight because they need us there by tomorrow morning.
Wayne, listen to me. We don't want to have to ask you, but we're desperate.
Who are you?
Poppy.
I should have asked for 200. You need somebody else in your band.
This summer, you can help Joss, Sophia, and Poppy search for that fourth band member to be pretty outrageous.
Have you done much singing?
Thought I'd find you in New York.
How are the kids? Are they okay?
Today, I'm gonna be rapping the Gettysburg Address.
We all yearn to be held real tight. How about Jess singers or Sophia singers? Fluffy unicorn dancing a rainbow. Next!
Is your father here? He's okay with you polluting the air with this garbage?
Uncle Wayne, I'm trying so hard.
Number 4.
That's a great idea.
All right, girls.
This band is over.
What's your rate?
Summer camps are really expensive. You can actually pay about $4,000 for your child to be on this film course. So instead of me doing that, I thought actually I could get all her friends together and we could all put $4,000 in together and we could all then end up with a budget that could afford me to make a little movie where I live in a summer resort with a beach. So the only thing I didn't have was a story, but I came up with a story and I approached someone and they wrote the feature film for me.
I'll walk by myself, thanks.
In a perfect world, we would all like to shoot for 6 months. However, I do tend to go slightly lower than that, 9 days being the timing for pretty outrageous. So 9 days to shoot a film probably isn't enough. Okay, I'll be honest, it's not enough. And what I mean by that is at the end of those 9 days, the crew, the cast, everybody was exhausted. You then start making mistakes, health and safety things start coming up. You need to make sure that you consider how everybody's feeling, because the worse you feel, the worse you're going to perform. Most importantly, the film begins to suffer and isn't as good as it could be. So this was the second film that I directed, and therefore I really wanted some support and some help from certain people that had actually been on other sets. And that can work, and it's important to have mentors around, but there are also opportunities for those people to feel like they maybe know more or would have done something differently, and things can end up not quite as what's the word I could use? Perfect as they should be. So if you've got conflict on set with ideas between yourself and other people, this is going to cause a problem. I would definitely be very clear on my vision, my ideas. So just make sure that there's a clarity on each person's role, each person's position on set. And everybody that I'd included in that all wanted to live in Hermosa Beach. They all wanted to stay there. My crew, the cast, everybody loved it. So seeing as that's where I lived, and I knew it, and I could get hold of sets, I could get hold of people, so it just made sense. Suddenly being able to incorporate the vastness of where I was shooting, in the sense of it was a real place with a real beach, with real people, with real crowds, definitely opened it up to being somewhere that if you were watching this, you'd like, wow, that would have been a bigger budget film. It was a fun experience. It was a happy film, actually. I did enjoy making a happy film.
Introducing the band with no name just yet. But yeah. 1, 2, 3.
World-class decision of bringing in my editor on set as my scriptee, because I very quickly realised, having edited the previous film, that actually that person could be there to say, oh, do you know what, when I'm cutting this together, I'm going to need this shot, or this shot. It definitely is a time factor because then you're not making poor decisions on what you should be shooting. You're actually shooting what you think you need. And it also means that in the editing, it's a quicker experience because your editor's been there and knows what he's going to put together. And he also understands all the footage, so he doesn't have to sit there and miss bits. The three things I'd say that I've learned from shooting a crowd scene were not to do it. I had 90 people turning up and I hadn't realised there were 90 people. And that's everyone, that's crew, cast, extras, all sorts of people. Because everybody thinks it's a really fun experience, so everybody believed they could just turn up. You can't do that. If you're going to make that set, you have to make it a closed set. It doesn't matter where you're shooting in Hermosa or wherever you are. I would say the second thing I learned was to keep it under a certain time frame, to make sure that I wasn't shooting for too long. And the third thing would be, depending on what time you're shooting, making sure the rules and regulations, because that many people make a lot of noise. When you're shooting a film in a really fun environment and a really relaxed way, to still have those clear guidelines. And one of those guidelines that was broken was people could go off and just sunbathe and chill out, which meant every time they came back to shoot, they were slightly more bronzed. Kids. So, I kind of have no choice because I have my own daughter who's in a lot of my films, and there's this thing called a studio teacher. The studio teacher costs a fortune. That would be the biggest thing for me because you have to make sure that you have that in your budget, as well as the amount of hours you're supposed to work with them. But I love kids, I love working with them. They're fun, but definitely cost more. What was great about Pretty Outrageous was that one of the parents on that set really enjoyed the way I worked and my vision. And so they actually decided to fund the next film.
Before books, before scriptures, there were legends, whispered stories of pendants, rare jewels from the 5 walked upon lands that gave the owner the power of darkness and immortality. My name is Sophie Carson. I just came from India where my parents were on a dig and they were looking for a scepter which once belonged to an evil medicine man.
It appears you are close to finding the last pendant.
Their power, according to legend, has the power to swallow worlds, forever trapped.
Alhanzi's a formidable foe. He's very powerful, and he's using their power for evil.
You're sending us down into a black tunnel of death.
Nope, not going down there. I have to try.
I'm going too.
Kids, welcome to the League of Legend Keepers.
So now I've got to make a film thinking, okay, I've got to pay people properly now. There are no favours here, I really need to make this work. So I knew I could make something for about 125k, and I asked for 250k to make 2 instead, which isn't very much, but it is also quite a lot when it's your 3rd and 4th film. So my whole crew were the same crew, so therefore there was only one travel cost, there's one accommodation cost because that's just being elongated. I kind of put a few of the same cast in, and our locations doubled up as well. So that all my costs were really reduced, and I was able to go to my post people and say, look, instead of having 1 movie, you're going to have 2, can you do me a deal? So the 3rd film, The League of Legend Keepers, should have been budgeted at about $5 million. Instead it was at 125k. However, remember people, we're all making films here without fear, so let's not let that stop you.
Do as I command, and you will remain human.
So how did I do it? How did I make a film that should have been for about $5 million for 125k? Well, you work within your parameters. The story came first, and that's what I knew I could shoot. And I was lucky enough to have somebody on set that could actually keep me motivated within the sense of this is what you'll need, this is how you could do it, you could get away with this. So even though when you watch the film, you probably will notice, especially if you're looking closely at some of the things that I missed, probably 70% of those visual effects did work out. I think it would have been better to either have removed them from the script pre-shooting or actually have taken a smaller type of film and fit it into that budget. And for a budget this size, it was taking on too much. When you shoot in these locations, I'd obviously built rapport with a lot of the people that I was working with in their locations. So I knew exactly what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. Shooting League of Legend Keepers actually meant I had to really find and sort the legal side of things, and that was permits.
Wow, I had no idea.
Me neither.
A lot of these other locations that I was now going to for these films meant that there were other rules and regulations that I wasn't aware of. It wasn't a location where I had already got access to toilets or electricity, so I did have to make sure I brought all those, which was a huge added cost. When you go to these sets, there are things you're not allowed to do or go to or be part of, or there are these strict timing. As soon as you arrive at these locations, you are aware of every single rule.
You don't have to do this alone.
Hurry, you must have something!
I don't know!
You must have something!
The location at the fort was not really very good for sound, and you have to make a choice. I've shot in a warehouse and then I've shot in some tunnels, and the sound was terrible. I had to do a lot of ADR. And both of those meant that due to the thickness of the tunnels or the metals nearby, meant that actually the sound for me within my budget wasn't going to work. So I had to make a choice. I just had to cut around it and make sure that that was a much more visual scene than it might have been scripted in the first place. Shooting in a van seemed like a good idea at the time.
Where are we?
This is our command center.
Nope. This is a van.
It was actually, it worked well, a bit hot in there, too many people, set it up brilliantly. Few problems arose though. Eye lines weren't always matching, trying to move the camera around in a small place was hard, and also what I really should have done is chosen one or two people to make sure that I got singles on them, so I had constant get-outs if there were mistakes made or if I needed to shorten the scene.
I'm so sorry. We're gonna fix this. He's not gonna hurt you, okay?
And so the hot tip is to pick the person who doesn't have the lines.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
I got you something.
Oh. I have a surprise for you.
Your dad and I will always be there for you. We will pick you up.
See, hugging is good for the soul. It is. You're supposed to hug somebody for 20 seconds.
Try to stay strong.
You know I love you.
How do you sleep 16 hours a day? I mean, I wish I could.
You have to stop him!
The voice is telling me it would be better for everyone if I wasn't here. I'm on my own then.
Will you dance with me?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Why are you dressed like that?
I'm practicing to be an angel in the Christmas play. I want to show you how things could have been.
Don't look too bad for a grown-up.
Shh. Watch.
All right, I get it. It isn't big enough of a deal. Hey.
It's too late. It's too late.
What is it, Tom?
It's not the memory I would change.
I'm pregnant.
Where were you when I needed you?
We were there, Tom. You just didn't see
It's
us.
just an excuse.
I want to know what it feels like to be hurt, to feel happiness. I want to be able to cry, to feel anger. Those emotions that show you're alive. Those emotions that make you who you are.
Why did you leave me? Why did you go? Why did everyone go?
I need to know you trust me, Tom.
Okay. can't do this on my own.
So shooting a fun kids film and then moving on to a teen suicide film meant there had to be a shift. There did have to be a shift in the way we worked.
What are you drinking?
A caramel cinnamon triple skinny something or another.
I'd say the biggest thing was that my lead actor had an acting coach on set, because we were moving at a pace that meant he actually still needed to have that time, and he'd been coached for the month leading up to it actually. So it meant that when we were on set moving at the pace we were moving, he was still able to be in the right frame. And so I was directing, but I wasn't directing him individually. I could go in there and tell him what he needed, and then the acting coach could come in and say, do you remember, I can tell you how to get into that emotional space. So that meant I could stick to my 2-week shooting schedule. Yeah, the cost of the acting coach was definitely worthwhile, because it meant that it took that pressure from me having to get my lead actor into a mental space.
Stop it!
So one of the cool things that happened while shooting Sand Angels, because it was a low budget and because I knew my crew and we had this phenomenal team and cast around me, was that you were able to kind of shift and change if things needed to. And one of the nights the rain came down, and obviously shooting in LA, that doesn't happen very often, so you know that if you get the rain, you want to put it in your movie because it gives this, again, a bigger budget feel. So opposite the house that we were shooting, there was a car park. The rain created this incredible feel. We had these bokeh lights behind us, so we were able to go over there and shoot very safely. And it looks like suddenly I'd created something that was a bigger budget within this car park. Sometimes you need to have your producer head on, director's head, writer's head. It just depends what you're doing.
I was from an orphanage around here in District 3.
Catherine?
What is this?
Proof that orphanages are still nothing more than dressed up hellholes.
What about the kids who don't have families?
Then we find them families. We just won't stop working until we find every child a family who loves them.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Miss Must, would you like to remark?
You can do this. Just tell me your story.
I lived in an orphanage until I was 5 years old.
Sound of Silence was my first film that was really based on a very true story. So it's a period piece, a true story, my biggest budget yet, $350K. The film's message was to try and explain that orphanages shouldn't be in existence. But this message as well wasn't about now. This was set 20 years ago. The orphanages have all been closed down now. So this was to retell the story from Romania's point of view of how they went around changing the system. But there are orphanages that are still in existence in other places around the world. So the whole point of this film was to show everybody that if Romania can do it, then you can do it. So I went to Romania to work out whether I could shoot on location, because I've been told it was very cheap to shoot there. But actually, by the time you put in the costs of flying everybody and staying over there, it wasn't going to be cheap enough to make my budget work. So I had to make LA work for Romania. And the only way I could do this was by shooting on a soundstage.
If you can't help me, I'll go with it to the press.
Go ahead.
I found this phenomenal place called Four Heart Studios. They were very supportive. They gave us the entire space. But to make those rooms look like the real rooms when I'd been location scouting took a lot more than I realised and a lot more money. The cameras that we've been using on previous films were very different to the ones that I used on this film, and therefore now I was upgrading not only my knowledge of how to use the cameras but also the lighting, the equipment that I needed, and understanding the technical side of things. So I was really trying to elevate everything I'd learnt. So this was the first time that I used a dolly, as well as several other pieces of equipment and different lenses, because I was really trying to start telling the story through my choice of shots. You just got to make sure with a foreign film, you've got the person on set who speaks the language, because there were several times where I just had to trust that the actors were saying their lines in the foreign language in the right way.
Da, onoarea dumneavoastră.
Yes, Your Honor.
Sunt doar câțiva ani de când România a fost eliberată de opresiunea comunistă.
But when it comes to editing, and neither your editor or you speak Romanian, it's quite hard to put those pieces together. You mustn't worry about being so precise with what they've said. You actually should write what you've written in the script. So in other words, if something was, I love you till the ends of the earth, but your script says I love you forever, you can just write I love you forever.
Once Barry signs these divorce papers, you can marry Jeffrey and I'll finally have a dad who's around.
I'm heading up to San Francisco for a music competition on Sunday. The winner gets 25 grand. Skip camp for the weekend and then come up with me.
As long as Mom's okay with it.
Camp just called. Sam didn't check back in.
Barry!
Did you happen to get a look at his face? It's always the same trick. One guy plays the bad guy, the other guy, the hero.
You didn't tell my mom? It's about you ending me when I was little because you'd rather leave your family than give up on music.
I just wish that Santa felt as positive about what you do.
She won't.
I'm really sorry I put you through all this.
It's okay. There's really nothing you can do. I'm happy I got to spend the weekend with you.
Let me just talk about, maybe I'm fine with my first proper movie. That's officially, I do feel that. We're shooting a road trip movie, and I thought to myself, I'm never going to shoot a movie driving in a car, ever. And then there is a road trip movie. So I really worked within understanding the script, a length of a script, the budget, the people I was working with. I knew that we couldn't drive, but I knew that I'd watched the film with Jennifer Aniston where she's in a big RV and they've got the curtains around them. So I knew that if I found a VW, that I could shoot it and cheat it because nobody ever saw outside of it. The original plan, we were going to make this real. We were going to drive from LA up to San Francisco. But by doing that pre-production and understanding the footage that I could shoot, using the drone and my car, which was the second vehicle, meant that I didn't need to waste money doing that. And my budget wasn't the biggest one because the one previously had been bigger than that. But it was the first time that I had an official casting for actors. We had a table read, the proper locations, everything was permitted. There was a definitive time frame. We had shortlisted everything. It was also one of the first films that I felt I'd really utilised everything I'd learned from every other film. And this was a musical film. This one I made sure everybody had been in the studio first. They were recording their live tracks. If you've got somebody and they want to sing in your movie and they want to give you the music, there's always a way of working it out. Don't think that you can't approach them, but don't presume, because some people are very definite about, I don't want to share and I don't want to do that. But there's no harm in asking. So I shot in a place called Cicada, which was this gorgeous restaurant in downtown LA. And so it meant that everybody could be in there. It was a huge space, it was fantastic. But one of the biggest things was it was the last scene of the film, and I shot that on the first day. So that was pretty intense to go straight into. But the other aspect was that I was going to try and shoot it smaller because I couldn't get enough extras.
Now I got you and my guitar. Now I got you and
my producer said, no, shoot it big, make it look wider, it'll work. Otherwise we might as well have shot anywhere. So I felt good that we did that. The extras were fantastic. They've actually been in 2 or 3 of my films because they just really enjoyed the experience. I looked after them well, I fed them, they were on camera, and I said, do you want to be in the next movie? And they came back. So treat your extras very well.
If I did it my way, I would have spoken to you since you left. She left.
There were aspects that I could really let go as a director because of the actors that I'd employed. They were able to really study their characters, they were working on their characters before they arrived to set. We had that time to discuss it, which allowed me on set to look at the bigger picture, giving them their individual choices, and I really enjoyed that. But the comedic aspect, the people that I've cast already had that in them, so I didn't need to work on that with them.
What kind of engine did you say it was?
In terms of...
86 or 68?
Oh, I thought it was a 68, but it turned out it was an 86.
One of my favourite scenes is the guy that works in the mechanics garage. Oh my gosh, makes me laugh every time. It's just the improv around it. And normally I don't like my actors to improv because really you've got a time frame, you need to stick to it, but he was good.
So, your mom and I have some big news.
We're getting married.
This is amazing. Now I can finally call you Dad.
I'm very proud about a decision that I made on Baby I'm Fine. I really went with my gut instinct. The instinct is important. If you really do believe in something, go for it. And if you don't take chances, you don't make advances. Film ended up pretty close to what I'd planned, pretty close to how I saw my actors. Obviously in the edit is a totally different movie anyway, but actually from the sense of humour of it, the emotional relationships, it actually probably worked out better than I could have imagined. Because they need to know the good stuff.
No, they don't want to know the good stuff.
But they don't know anything about the film. This is the stuff you should be recording.